Welcome to episode 52 of the For the Love of Cricket podcast with Jim and Akim. Today we'll be discussing quite a heated subject over the past couple of weeks. Money in cricket. um, the pinnacle of it being South Africa sending a squad to New Zealand in January, later this month, to play a test series. They'll be having at least 7 debutants, which will include the captain of the team. What do you have to say about this?
I just have a question. Is this the first game in South Africa's history? How do they have a captain making his debut?
But on a more serious note, over the past couple of years, we could say the past 10 years at least, there has been some issues. They have mostly came from the West Indies cricket team and Zimbabwe. Now we're seeing it reaching the bigger nations, the stronger nations, nations that are ranked within the top 1 to 3, the top 1 to 5. South Africa, they had the Future Tours program planned from 2022. They came on with the South Africa T20 in early 2023. Apparently it was a huge success. The board was well compensated from the staging of that tournament and found a window where they could basically take the international game for a joke. Asking that the test series with New Zealand that they knew from beforehand was to be played in January 2024 this year and still put the tournament in that window. Then came out to the media and said they had no other option. They have until April 2025 to play that game and to complete the test cycle. I think New Zealand should abort the series, but it's 3 points and they want to get back to the World Test Championship finals. So playing a first class level team or a South African A team would be like receiving a late Christmas gift. What do you have to say on this?
Well, to speak on the most immediate thing that you said, if I were in the New Zealand camp, I would welcome playing a team like this, not the strongest South African team. I would take the opportunity to beat them at home to secure the points. They have to play, they can only control what they can control. They can only play the team that is in front of them. So that business is well out of their control. They have nothing to do with that. That being said, I think a number of the South African international players, the regulars, would be very happy with the new T20 league that has been formed in South Africa. They stand to gain significantly from it in terms of from the financial side. I think that the views on international cricket have really shifted. I remember growing up, it was always my dream. I think you can probably say the same, that it would have been our dreams to play international cricket and to play for the West Indies. We were born in the 90s. The IPL didn't start until 2008, I believe. By then I was probably 13 years old. My dreams would have been long established. I think this newer generation, their dreams are to play in the IPL and in the bigger franchise leagues. I think if you speak to the younger players now, they aren't affixed on test cricket. It's about playing in the IPL, playing in the T20 leagues around the world and making as much money as possible. I think growing up, even from a financial side, test cricket seemed as if it was the most financially viable format of cricket. It probably had the greatest compensation for players. Not that that's what we were seeking, but it was just our dream to play test cricket. But things have completely shifted now, and who do we lay the blame on?
You mentioned some figures earlier. how the pie, the money pie, the billions are shared around among the 106 nations that are part of the ICC. Approximately 39% of it goes to India. 6 goes to Bangladesh and Australia.
Each England, Australia, and Pakistan get around 6%
each.
Yeah.
And then the
other full member nations get between 2 and 5%. And then the remaining 11% of a $3 billion US dollar figure, by the way. The remaining 11% is shared amongst 96 associate nations.
That is about 700,000 per team.
About 700,000 US annually per team. So it's a new MOU that is being prepared. It should cover all the ICC events for the next 3 or 4 years, and India gets almost 40% of the money. And this goes along with them getting almost 3 billion US dollars to cover the bilateral series that are played in India. That's when visiting teams go to India. And then their IPL TV rights deal that is about 6 billion US dollars as well. So as you can clearly see, the BCCI controls almost all of the money in cricket.
Well, as with any company, the BCCI, I would call them the CEO of international cricket at the moment. And with any company, the CEO gets the larger share of the pie. My eyes were opened earlier when we were doing some research. I thought West Indies players probably are being paid under par. When I think of all the other top level sports in the world, cricket is probably the third. In terms of leading sports, cricket is third.
In terms of viewership.
Yeah, it is behind football and track and field. To hear that South Africa's players are being paid $1,200 per one-day international game, I asked the question, they must be playing first class for free. Because that is actually less than our first class players get to play a 4-day game.
That's true.
And thinking about that, I can look back and say why. Well, we know they have their cold pack issues. So, firstly, you're not being paid enough to play. Then you don't know if you're going to play based on the dynamic of the team that has to be put on the field on a given day. It must always seem more lucrative to head to England, sign a cold pack deal, be comfortable and be paid well. Some of those deals in England are worth £100,000.
Yeah.
You play a couple test matches and you just hop on a bird and go across. Now that has been dismantled due to the UK government pulling England from the European Union.
Brexit.
So we see the likes of Doan Olivier and other players returning, Riley Russo returning to South Africa and making a push for national selection. You have some other numbers to share with us.
Well, let's start on South Africa because this is an interesting case. According to the research that we have done, the South African international players, the test players, get approximately 4,500 US dollars per test match. They get 1,200 US dollars per one-day international, as you said, and then about 800 US dollars per T20 international. When you look at that compared to the likes of India, where it's reported that they make between 18,000 and 20,000 US dollars per test match, 7,000 plus US dollars for a one-day international. You look at Australia, where they make at about 13,500 US dollars for one test match. You look at the one-day international figures, it's almost 10,000 US dollars for an Australian to play an ODI in comparison to a South African earning 1,200. You can see why the likes of Quinton de Kock as a prime example, why he has basically retired from international cricket. You look at somebody like him, he was the second highest run scorer in the just concluded 50 over World Cup, and he is one of the premier batters, or he was one of the premier batters in international cricket. He was easily, I would say easily a top 10 player in 50 over and T20 cricket for sure. And then in Test cricket, he's probably one of the best wicketkeeper batsmen in the world. But he is being compensated almost 3 or 4 times less than his counterparts in the other countries. When someone likes him, also when someone like him, when he retires from international cricket and he goes on the franchise scene, he's paid top rate. He is paid big bucks in almost all the franchise leagues. He plays in the IPL, he plays in the T10, he plays in almost all of the leagues around the world. And just by playing in those leagues, he rakes in well over $1 million US annually. And when you compare that to what his contract in South Africa would have been, the highest contract that he could have earned in South Africa is 200,000 US for the year. So in one full season playing franchise cricket around the world, Quinton de Kock could make 5, 6, 7 times his annual retainer from South Africa. So it's almost a no-brainer when you look at the numbers.
We have recently seen 3 key members of the West Indies team rejecting central contracts in Jason Holder, Nicholas Puran and Kyle Mayers. All 3 are heading to the IPL. I think Puran is set to earn the most of the 3.
Yeah.
We've seen Holder for quite a number of years, even when he was captain, had issues trying to get non-objection certificates to go and play tournaments. As the captain, persons were looking at him like, why would he want to abandon the team, this, that, and the third? But they've refused to realize that the life of an international athlete is very short. So you can look at these numbers and think, my God, there are a lot, but if they retire at age 35, they have at least another 35, 40 years to live.
Plus people to support.
People to support, generally from nations, third world nations, the Caribbean, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. You're not just supporting yourself. Most of the times these players are coming from negative.
Yeah.
They are less than poor. So they have to support an entire family structure and try and build everyone up, or just support everybody full time. So those resources get strained heavily. West Indies also selected a team recently to play against Australia. So they're touring to Australia. I think is Holder missing from that team?
Yeah, Holder is definitely missing from that team. I think the tour clashes with the T20 tournament in South Africa, and then I think the Bangladesh T20 series follows after as well. When you look at the numbers for a test match, as a West Indian player, it's between 8,000 and 9,000 US. It's a 2-test series that requires weeks of preparation going down under, and you compare that to what the players have been bought for in the South African T20 League and in the Bangladesh Premier League, and it almost becomes a case of pride, international pride, representing the Caribbean versus taking care of your family and future generations. And some would say it's a difficult decision to make. I don't think it is, because I would only make one choice here in this case. I think it's a no-brainer. Someone like Jason Holder is somebody who has represented the region with distinction, I must say. If not in all formats, definitely in Test cricket, he was the #1 Test all-rounder for a decent while. That is an outstanding achievement considering the performances of the West Indies team in Test cricket. think he represented us well, led us well as captain, and he has probably gotten to a stage in his career where he has decided that he needs to take care of his life after cricket, and he is putting that first. It's a bitter pill to swallow for fans in the region, but Hold Up has to make decisions that will take care of himself and his family in the long run.
Do you think these do you think the younger players coming through now would be seeing the West Indies team not as the ultimate goal but as a stepping stone to a payday?
Definitely, they'll definitely see it as a stepping stone. When you look at how the West Indies team basically opens the global market up to all of them, outside of playing for the West Indies, your opportunities of getting into the other franchise leagues is pretty limited. Most of the guys that play on the circuit around the world now are or have been international cricketers. There are few exceptions, very few exceptions, and it's very difficult to get out to that market. When you play for the West Indies, you play against the full member nations, sometimes the associates, but you are on a global stage and your performances are able to be televised. Outside of that, it's probably just the Caribbean Premier League. It's a tournament that has done well. It is growing from strength to strength, but I still think that playing for the West Indies would give you much more leverage than probably just playing in the CPL. That might change now, where we see the franchises from the IPL are starting to own teams in all the franchise leagues around the world. So that has them having their staff and the whole setup. They're basically set up in all the leagues. It helps them in scouting talent, probably makes it much easier to scout talent. So that is also a stepping stone. But no, I don't think playing for the West Indies is the pinnacle. I think it is definitely a stepping stone to go further in the franchise leagues.
I had a key observation over the past 2 days. David Warner retiring from one day international cricket. I think the timing is weird. There is a South Africa T20 league coming up as well as Bangladesh. He is on his last. Australian Central contract is quite big. They get paid about $1 million US.
Yeah, they're almost in that region. They get paid lucratively because the likes of Pat Cummins and Mitchell Stark have been afforded the luxury. They've been able to turn down IPL contracts. I don't think many other nations or many other players from the other nations could afford to that. Maybe England, India of course, but you know, the Indians, the IPL. So it's almost crazy to think about. It's life-changing money that they have refused, and not just on one occasion. Several occasions they have turned it down. They have prioritized the Ashes. They have prioritized playing in big series, especially series at home, and playing in World Cups. But when you're compensated like that, you can genuinely make a decision like that.
Yeah, we've seen it especially from the English players. They get I think around 1.5 million to 2 million US in their central contract. That is equivalent to like 800, 900,000.
Yeah, they get
pounds.
They get like 800,000 pounds for the central contract, and now they have been given the option to sign the contracts for more than 1 year. Generally, in cricketing terms, contracts run for a year, especially at the international level. The English players now have 2 and 3 year contracts, so they have a lot of comfort in making their decisions.
Yeah, that is I think that is a cutting edge move from the English management. Players like security, so if you can secure somebody for 2-3 years, we'll give you $1.5, $2 million secured for 2-3 years. You just play for us, and that's it there. I would take that, because with the IPL and those auctions, and you don't know what you get in, you don't know if you will get in. You have to be kind of a sleuth with how you set your base price. It can be tricky, but they are in competition with these IPL, these Indian franchises as well, that
They
are
are.
signing franchise deals with the players.
Yeah.
So wherever the team is, you go there, you play. Teams like the Royals,
Night
Night
Riders.
Riders. It is.
Delhi Capitals.
It will be interesting going forward, seeing how this plays out. The good thing is the players will be well compensated from now on. I don't know how outside of the big three nations, how the rest of the nations will try to compensate their players. I don't know where they will get the funding from. It might be a case where we have to go the football route and set international windows for cricket. It would mean players would probably play for less domestic teams on the franchise circuit, because you would have more than one competitions being played at once.
I think it creates a conundrum, because when you look at the most recent TV rights deal that the ICC has basically signed off on, they're getting $3 billion to cover all ICC events for the next couple of years. Now, in sport, entertainment comes through competition, and I think that a lot of the international teams will be significantly weaker if their best talent does not play. If the best talent does not play for the international team, what you might find happening is that we see it with the West Indies. We see where the international series are played throughout the cycle, the players are not there, and then when the World Cup comes around, there's a bit of there's some contention in the selection. There are players that end up missing out, and then it causes the tournament to lose some of that. It loses the spectacle, basically. You look at the likes of India and Australia. India, Australia, and England can afford to keep the best talent, no matter what. Sri Lanka, the West Indies, the other nations, South Africa, they don't have that luxury. So you're going to come around and see a case of players probably refusing to play in the World Cup because they want to play in the other leagues. And then I think that will dampen the spectacle a bit. I think it will still be competitive no matter what once the nations are there, but we could see a case of the quality probably dropping in the coming years unless a solution is found.
Let me play devil's advocate. It would mean more players would get international exposure.
That is true, and that is an argument that has always been
And
used.
if all the teams are weaker, then the competition will be even.
Well, if only all the teams were weak in a perfect world, there are 3 teams that still remain strong.
An outsider team will always get the 4th position in the semi-finals. You can squeeze in a New Zealand again.
So it's a battle of 4th place.
Yeah. And we know England always find a way to choke, so we might just have 2 runners up.
Alright, speaking logically though, what do we think that the possible solutions to this conundrum could be? Because we clearly see that the smaller nations, the likes of the West Indies, South Africa, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they cannot afford to pay their players at the same rate as the larger, more established nations, and they also cannot compete with the franchises. So what do we see that could alleviate the problem in the future?
Well, given the big 3 voting has already been done, the best solution right now is to do the windows. I think that would make players more comfortable. Here's why. The supply for international players to play in those domestic T20 leagues would become less, because the demand at a specific time would have increased. So we see Mitchell Stark and Pat Cummins being drafted in the IPL for almost $2 million. Those numbers would skyrocket.
Yeah.
It would be a case where in football we have the English Premier League competing with the Spanish League, the French League and the German League for a pool of players.
Yeah.
Therefore, the English players get paid a ridiculous sum of money to play per week. As a result, the international games would be played more for pride.
Yeah.
As we say with football, it's not really a money thing. You're just playing because you get to represent your country. It's just pride. It would be back to square one for international cricket, where 30, 40 years ago, almost all the players were amateur. They were playing because they love the game and because they love their country.
Yeah.
I think that's the easiest solution right now, given we know the big three don't want to really share the money as it should be.
I think a problem with that though is how the future tours, how the games are scheduled, because I think that there's a great disparity in who plays who and when they're played. I've heard CEOs speak publicly about the nature of the tours, and to be honest, teams only really turn a profit, the boards only really turn a profit when they play against a team from the big three. When they play against a home series against a team from the big three. So the likes of a Bangladesh going to Australia, or Bangladesh coming to the Caribbean, Zimbabwe going to India, for example, those series hardly ever happen, and when they do, they aren't profitable. So it's a weirdly structured scheme. I think that they just need to go back to the drawing board with how things are done, because it needs to be a more viable and equitable system in my estimation.
I think that could be, well, they only have, how many northern teams have in cricket? 2, 3, 4.
England,
West Indies,
the West Indies,
India
falls, the equator goes through.
Yeah, I count them as northern.
Okay.
Bangladesh, the equator goes through Bangladesh as well.
That is also a challenge with the seasons.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Many northern teams. Sri Lanka is all the way down there. It'll be tough. If you're 2 of the 3, well, India in the middle there. I think it could be set where Bangladesh play, but England would want to go to Bangladesh in their winter. They would rather go to India or South Africa or Australia. When was the last time Bangladesh played Australia?
It's more than 7 years ago. More than 7 years ago. In Australia, more than 7 years ago. And that has probably passed through 2 cycles of the Future Tours program. So you really wonder how it's schemed. You really wonder how they scheme it and how the games are organized.
If they want to find a solution, they will. I think that structure could work. It might be a case where they have to start just sharing the TV revenue evenly, no matter where series are played. So a West Indies will be depending on India to come here every 2-3 years to pay everybody.
That's the suggestion. That has been the suggestion, where the TV money is put forward and split more evenly so that it can go to all the nations. The nations can compensate the players well enough. They'll have them available to play international cricket, but the question lingers, why would the BCCI agree to that? And how would they benefit from all of this?
They can have teams to play against.
They will have teams to play against regardless, because they have
play
the money.
Teams?
They have the money. They will always have teams to play against.
Because with that TV issue, the time zone, I don't think the time zone difference would affect that. You just know that if you're playing a series in the West Indies, the games have to be played in the day. In Australia, you have to play the games a little later. Australia has a good crowd, so it wouldn't really matter to them. But West Indies wouldn't have any night games, which doesn't really matter anyway. So it's a tough decision. Persons being paid a lot can't do it, so our amateur minds and freelance thinking in the last 20 minutes wouldn't suffice either. You have anything else to add?
No, nothing else to add. It's interesting, the business of sport.
Alright guys, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, guys.